Well, hello everyone, my name is Swiggo and welcome to yet another video on the channel. This time we're going to see if we can beat Pokemon Emerald Kaizo with only starter Pokemon. And you know, at first sight, this challenge might not seem too hard to some people because they have never heard of the game Pokemon Emerald Kaizo. Well, your world is going to change for the worst because this is one of the hardest Pokemon games out there right now. Also guys, I just want to give a huge shout out to Let's Smack Zach for being my first ever Patreon. If you guys also want to support me on Patreon, the link will be in the description. It's totally optional, but new Patrons get a shout out in the next challenge video. You also get access to other perks like Discord perks and stuff like that. And I'm also working on memberships, but I first have to finish the emotes and I also need to find some time to stream again. But definitely be on the lookout for that. Well now, why is this game so hard? Well, first off, because your Pokemon don't have any EVs whatsoever, so you always have the base stats of your Pokemon to work with, and that's it. And to add to this, the opponent you're facing will always have max EVs on his or her Pokemon, which is crazy to fight against. So you're basically always at a disadvantage. The game has also drastically changed in terms of the Pokemon that you're fighting. Every single trainer has other teams and teams that are basically built to beat any kind of team, which is crazy. Sometimes there will be trainers that will run a Toxic Stall team, so they will just use Toxic and use Protect a bunch of times, combined with Recover, of course, because, you know, you have to lose. And besides that, there are Wobbuffets everywhere with the Shadow Tag ability that can trap your Pokemon in and kill them with a Destiny Bond or a Counter or a Mirror Coat. The AI is also very much improved from the normal base game, and that also makes it way harder to work with. And I would say that I won't be using any items in battle, but did I say that this game doesn't allow you to use any items in battle? You physically can't use items, which is great because I wasn't going to do it anyway. This game will really get the best Pokemon trainer out of you because you really need to be on top of your game. You can't make any misclicks. You have to run a right team, the right moveset. You have to have something against everything, and that's why I thought, well, why don't I run a team of starter type Pokemon? Before playing the game, I was like, this can't be that hard, right? And then after I played the game, I was like, I'm never playing this again. But I think that I did way too much explaining already. Let's just get right into it and show you what this game is all about. Of course, we name ourselves Swiggo, and then we can finally pick the starter that I always wanted to pick, which is Mudkip, because it's my favorite starter. Of course, the game starts off like normal. You fight the level 2 Zigzagoon, but this time he actually almost kills us, which is insane. It's a level 2 Zigzagoon. And you also only start off with the move Tackle. I then named my Mudkip Beep just after the Mudkip that I had in my Pokemon Emerald Soul Link together with Plonkabro 900. If you haven't checked that out already, the link will be in the description. If I would have tried to Nuzlocke this game, well, it wouldn't have worked out because I lost to a level 4 Ledyba. Yeah, I did. Eventually, I grinded up my Mudkip up to level 7 so that I could take on May and her Trico. Her Trico has Quick Attack, which means that it will always go first, but it doesn't matter because we are a little bit stronger and 3 tackles managed to finish her off. I then find out that Pokeballs only cost about 10 Pokedollars, so I go ahead and spend all of my money on them and catch every single starter that I can find in this area, which are Charmander and Cyndaquil. I named my Charmander Sandra and my Cyndaquil Pinko. No reason, I just typed in some random letters and I got these names. And no kidding, I wasn't playing around anymore because I knew that this game would really want to screw you over. So I just grinded up my Mudkip up to level 16 in the first patch of grass that I found, and I got myself a Marshtomp. And now you guys might think that this is way too much over leveling. Well, you'll see that it really isn't. It's really like it's necessary to grind in this game. I then had my first encounter with Team Magma, and it didn't go as smoothly as I expected because we almost lost because his team was crazy. I mean, he had a Coughing in there who was Toxic Stalling in the first 10 minutes of the game, which is what? Why? If I didn't overlevel so much with my Marshtomp, I probably would have lost, but we didn't, luckily enough. I then wanted to continue my journey, but Red stopped me at the end of a bridge and wanted to fight me. Why is Red in this game? I mean, it's very cool, but it's going to be very hard. He has his usual team, Eevee, the 3 starters from Kanto, and then Pikachu. But because we overleveled our Marshtomp more than enough, we managed to take him out with a few mud shots and water guns. After that fight, I knew that it was only going to get even harder, so I grinded grinded up my Cyndaquil up to level 16 so that he would evolve into a Kulava. I also managed to find one of the most crucial team members ever, Bulbasaur. You won't believe how good Venusaur is in this game. Like, I really underestimated Bulbasaur, but he is great. We name him Toad, and then I decide to grind up my Charmander up to level 16 so that he would evolve into a Charmeleon. I then traveled to the first gym and tried to take it on, but I lost to a gym trainer, so I decided that I had to grind up my Bulbasaur so that it would evolve into an Ivysaur. Luckily, there was a beach nearby and I already got the old rod in this game. You get it very early on, which is great, and I grinded up against Kabutos and Omanytes. After my Bulbasaur evolved, I decided to take on the first gym, but her Anorith, her freaking Anorith literally swept through my entire team a few times, which was crazy, but after trying to figure out her strategy, I finally got the run that I needed. She starts off with her Nosepass, who I one-shot with one Razor Leaf. Next up is Relicanth, who shares the same fate. Next up is Lunatone, so I switch into Beep to try and Water Gun it a few times because I know that he has Confusion. Fortunately, we do get put to sleep, but eventually we snap out of it and we Water Gun one last time to take it out. Laleep always gives me trouble, so I try to Smokescreen it and lower its accuracy, but it isn't of any use because she doesn't miss any of her Rock Tombs, so I then go for one last Metal Claw before Charmeleon goes down. I then switch in Pinko, hit it with a Flame Wheel, but she has a Citrus Berry which heals her up fully. We hit her with one more Flame Wheel before we get taken out with a Rock Tomb. I then go into Toad to finish it off with one final Razor Leaf. Next up is the bane of my existence again, Anorith, but this time I managed to keep my Ivysaur alive, so I Razor Leafed it 2 times and it was down. Last up was her Shuckle, so I thought it was going to be a Toxic Staller, but luckily it wasn't, so a few Razor Leaves took it down. We get our first gym badge and I'm really proud. Before we continue, I want to say a few more things. Gym leaders in this game also can't use any items, but as a trade-off they get great held items like Lumberries or Leftovers, so that they can heal up that way. I then beat up May, which was an optional battle, but I figured that I might need the XP. I then found out that I could get even more starters at this point in the game, so I got myself Squirtle and Totodile, which I named Alvin and Thick Cheek, and then traveled to Dewford town to try and take on Brawly, but my team wasn't quite optimized to it, so I had to fight him a few times to try and find out a strategy to kill him. Eventually, after like a dozen tries, I finally figured out how to beat him. So I start off with Totodile and I do some chip damage against his Hitmontop. I then go into Beep to Mudshot him twice to take him out. Hitmonlee outspeeds us, but after I hit it with a Mudshot, he doesn't outspeed us anymore, so that we can take him out. Now is the last of the Hitmonchan brothers, so we take him out with 2 Mudshots after we get hit with a big fat Facade. I know that Meditite has Rock Slide, but I know that my Pinko can at least tank one of them and take him out with 2 Flame Wheels. Hariyama is always very bulky and very tough, so I go into Charmeleon and hit him with 3 smoke screens to lower its accuracy before we get taken out. I then send in Toad, and because of all the accuracy drops, he doesn't hit any of his moves anymore, so he goes down. Last up is Poliwrath, and this thing knows Ice Punch, but it doesn't hit hard enough, so my Ivysaur is way stronger and takes him out. After acquiring our second gym badge, it was time for the Granite Cave Ice Puzzle, which is the second hardest ice puzzle I've ever had to do. My first hardest is a little bit further up in the game. So me being the stubborn guy that I am, I didn't want to look up a YouTube tutorial, so I was just sitting there for like half an hour trying to figure out how to get it. But eventually I was smart enough, I was big brain, and I got through it. Just to find out that there was another one behind it. And me being stubborn once again, I didn't want to look it up, and eventually I did get through it after like an hour of trying. So we reach Steven, I deliver the letter, and we go to Sleeport Beach. After finding out that the beach is actually swamped with trainers, my Totodile evolves into a Croconaw. I then had to go to the museum where I had to fight some Team Aqua grunts, and I actually lost a few times against these guys because they had OP teams. But after a few more tries, I managed to figure out their strategy and beat them. Then after a little bit more grinding, my Squirtle evolved into a War Turtle, and then I could take on May for the second rival fight. She starts off with Minun, which is not a good type matchup against my War Turtle, so we get taken out with a single Thunderbolt. Then I switched in Beep, who finished it off with a single Mudshot. Then switched in Grovyle, I switched in Pinko, hit it with a Flame Wheel, but she then switched into Croconaw. Big brain move right there. So I had to switch into Toad and finish it off with the single Magical Leaf. Pinko then took down Pidgeotto with 2 Flame Wheels. Beep made short work of Nidorina. Pinko finished off Grovyle with a single Flame Wheel, and last up was Charmeleon, who got finished off by Beep with 2 Mud Shots. I then had to find Wally with his level 70 Ralts, level 70. Luckily it only knew Pain Split, so we managed to make a quick job out of him. Then I tried to enter the gym, but as you try to enter the gym, there is a trainer that wants to fight you straight away, and I got stuck on this girl. For the love of God, I couldn't even get past her. How would I be able to get past Watson? So I decided that I had to do a big, and I mean a very big, grinding session. So while grinding up in the grass, because there really isn't any other place where you can grind up in this game because there is no Versus Seeker, my Ivysaur evolved into a Venusaur. After a little bit more grinding, my Pinko evolved into a Typhlosion, and my Marshtomp evolved into a Swampert. Marshtomp actually learned Rock Slide on the way, which was great, and my Typhlosion also learned Thunder Punch. So with my buffed up team, I took on the gym. I didn't know what he was going to lead with, so I just led with Venusaur, and I sludge bombed his Jolteon. And because of a crit, I actually took it out in 1 hit. Lantern was up next, and I knew that his thing had an ice move, but I decided to stay in anyway and hit it with 2 magical leaves to take it out. Ampharos had the hidden power for grass, so I was kind of afraid to bring in Swampert, but I managed to survive, and we hit it with 2 Mud Shots to take it out. The next 2 Pokemon were Raichu and Electabuzz, which my Swampert took out with Mud Shot. The last Pokemon was Manectric, and Typhlosion managed to finish him off with 2 Fire Punches. As I was making my way up to Meteor Falls, I had another encounter with Red. I knew that it was going to start off with Pikachu, so I started off with Swampert and one-shotted it with my Mud Shot. Pinko managed to deal with Venusaur. He also learned Thunder Punch when he leveled up. Snorlax was a little bit too beefy for my Venusaur to take him down. I did manage to get him down into red health, but he then kept healing with rest, so eventually Venusaur went down and Swampert had to finish the job with Muddy Water. Next up was Blastoise, and with my Venusaur taken out, I had to go and opt for Swampert, which did take him out with only 3 Mud Shots. Espeon went down with 2 Fire Punches from Pinko, and last up was his Charizard, who knew Earthquake, but Pinko hung on and took him down with 2 Thunder Punches as well. While I was making my way up to Meteor Falls once again, there were a lot of Team Magma grunts there, and my Crocodile managed to evolve into a Feraligatr. I then got stuck on one of the grunts who had a Chansey, and I just couldn't beat it, so I had to try, and eventually I did get past it, but it was a very hard Chansey to beat. We then did all of the shenanigans with Team Aqua and Team Magma in Meteor Falls and head straight to the volcano. And then I got stuck on the Team Magma commander Tabitha. His team was very well rounded and could take down almost any opposition if you weren't overleveled. And I wasn't particularly that overleveled, but eventually though, I did get a strategy to take him down, and it was time to move on to Maxie. Next up is one of the hardest fights in the game. This is where a lot of people actually hook off and they just don't want to play the game anymore because this match is just so unfair. But if you get past it, I want to say that it gets better, but it really doesn't. It only gets worse, believe me. So he starts off with one of the Reggies. Yeah, he has a legendary Pokemon in his arsenal, which already makes it kinda hard. So after getting my ass handed to me about 30 times, I decided that it was time to grind. And with grind, I mean grind, like a lot of grinding. I evolved my Charmeleon into a Charizard, and then after that, I also had to grind up my entire team up to like level 40 to 45-ish, and then I might have been able to have a chance to take him out. So his first Pokemon was a Registeel, and I do have my Swampert to take him down with a few Mud Shots. Houndoom was next, and I knew that he had hidden power grass, so I had to switch out. So then I switched into Pinko and double-edged him twice, and then hit him with a quick attack, while we only were left with 6 health remaining, but we did take out the Houndoom. Next out was Claydol, so I switched in Venusaur to take him down with 2 Leaf Blades. Next up was Alakazam, so I switched in my Charizard and tried to finish him off with a Fire Punch and a Quick Attack, but he was left with a sliver of health, and then he took me down with a Thunder Punch. So I then switched in Pinko to finish it off with one last Quick Attack. Dusclops was up next, and I knew that this thing was going to be a staller, and I was right. He just had rest, and I just kept on crunching. Eventually I got the special defense drop, and he went down with a few more crunches. Last up was Crobat, and Thick Cheek actually managed to hit a critical Ice Punch before he went down. What a legend. Then I switched in Pinko to yet again finish it off with a Quick Attack. Next up was the hardest one, actually one of the hardest gym fights in this game. If you aren't prepared for it, you're not gonna win, because this woman can take out every single type weakness that she has, because she has Solar Beam on every single one of her Pokemon, and there is always a sunny day up in her gym. So my Swampert was basically useless in this entire gym, even though that he was super effective against all of her Pokemon. So I knew that I had to grind up just a little bit more, so I grinded up my team up to level 50, and then I tried her gym once again. Pinko took down her Ninetales with 2 double edges, and then she sent out her Charizard, so I switched into my Crocodile. She then went for a Heat Wave, and 1 Rock Slide managed to finish it off. Next was Blaziken, who had a super effective Thunder Punch against my Charizard, but I did go for 2 Wing Attacks because we outspeed her and we take her down. Next was Castform, and I went for a Fire Punch and a Wing Attack before my Charizard went down, and then Pinko finished it off with a Double Edge. Next up was her Typhlosion, so I knew that this thing had Earthquake, so I decided to stay in and hit it with 1 double edge. I also knew that it had Solar Beam, so I switched into my Feraligatr, and I knew that 1 Solar Beam couldn't take me out, and my Rock Slide managed to finish it off. Last up was our Arcanine, so I decided to stay in, but it knew Extreme Speed, so my Feraligatr got taken out. I then switched into Swampert, I tanked a Solar Beam somehow, hit it with a Mud Shot to lower its speed for the Venusaur to take it out next turn, and my Swampert went down to an Extreme Speed. Because of the speed drop, my Toad outsped her, and a Sludge Bomb finished her off. Next up was Norman, and I really wasn't too afraid of him because normal types normally aren't really that threatening to my team. And I was right, after like 2 or 3 attempts, I managed to get the better of him. His first Pokemon was a Kangaskhan, who took down my Feraligatr after I managed to hit him with a Superpower. I then switched in Pinko to finish it off with a Fire Punch. Next out was Toro, so I switched into my Venusaur and killed it with 2 Leaf Blades. Next up was Espeon, and I thought that my Pinko could be able to deal with it, but we got taken out by a Psychic and a Single Beam. How is this a normal type Pokemon, by the way? So then I switched in Swampert to hit it with a Muddy Water and take it out. Next up was Snorlax, and I managed to get off a Fire Punch with Sandra and burn him, which was amazing. He did set up a lot of curses, so he one-shotted me with a Body Slam afterwards. I then switched in Swampert and finished it off with a Muddy Water. Then his Swallow came out. I did get off an Ice Punch, but a Double Edge finished off my Swampert, but it also took down the Swallow. I then switched in Marill. I know this is kind of illegal, but hear me out. If it would have been Wartortle, it would have had the same outcome. I just wanted to trigger his Truant ability, and then I wanted to switch in my final Pokemon on a safe turn. Technically, I didn't do damage with my Marill, so I don't feel like this was cheating. So then I switched in my Toad, and I hit it with a Leaf Blade, and I got the crit, and the Slacking went down in 1 single hit, and we got ourselves the 5th gym badge. Then I went to the next route, next to Mobile City, where I beat up some bug catchers that had level 100 Pokemon, and I got myself some Lucky Eggs, which are the only held items that I will be using in this entire run. Then I went to the Weather Institute and cleared that from Team Aqua as well, which wasn't too hard, and then it was time for another rival fight with May. She starts off strong with a Raichu, but my Venusaur got the better of him with 2 Leaf Blades. Feraligatr was up next, so I decided to stay in and one-shot it with a Leaf Blade as well. Next up was Clefable, and my Feraligatr had a super effective superpower, but it barely did any damage, and we got taken out with a single Thunder. So then Beep had to finish off the Clefable with 2 Muddy Waters. Next up was Sceptile, and this thing had a super effective Thunder Punch for my Charizard ready, but we were too strong and 2 Fire Punches finished it off. Last up was Nidoqueen, and my Swampert made short work of her as well. And now it was gym time once again, and no, your eyes are not betraying you. This girl has the 3 legendary freaking birds. So as you might have guessed, we lost a lot of times against her. So I grinded up my entire team in Mount Pyre against every single trainer that I could find, and then I went back with levels that were around level 75 to level 70. She starts off with her Aerodactyl and Zapdos, so I start off with my Feraligatr and Swampert. I use a Surf and a Muddy Water, and the Aerodactyl is down in 1 turn. Next out was Flygon, so I decided to double up against it, but my Feraligatr got taken out. I switched in Venusaur, and Swampert luckily took it down with 1 Ice Punch. Next out was the Crobat, who actually had Giga Drain for my Swampert, so it did crazy amounts of damage, but we doubled up on the Zapdos and it went down to a Sludge Bomb. Next up was the second legendary bird, Articuno, but I decided to try and put the Crobat to sleep, but it had a Lumberry, so it woke up straight away, and the Articuno took down my Swampert with 1 hit. So then I switched in Charizard and tried to double up on the Articuno, but my Fire Punch was enough to take it down in 1 hit because it was a critical hit. Next up was Moltres, but first Crobat had to hit my Venusaur with a super effective Sky Attack before I could hit the Moltres with a Sludge Bomb. So then I split up my attacks. Charizard took down the Crobat with 1 one Fire Punch, and Venusaur got a critical hit with Sludge Bomb to take out the Moltres and win ourselves the 6th gym badge. Then I had to run through the entire Team Magma hideout, dying like a dozen times in the process because the grunts there were incredibly hard. And now comes one of the hardest fights in the entire game, the second fight against Maxie once again. His team has changed drastically since the last time I fought him, including an Entei thrown in there which literally sweeps my entire team. Honestly, if it wasn't for this Entei, I would be able to beat him easily, but because of this Entei, I couldn't beat him at this level. I had to grind up even more, but luckily the Pokemon in the Team Magma hideout were pretty high level, so it didn't take me that long, only like a couple of hours. I grinded up my team up to level 73, and then the rest of my team members would be higher level, and then I tried again. But yet again, I failed a few times, and by a few I mean another like 20 times, but I knew that it was possible because I got to his last Pokemon, so I kept on trying and trying and trying, and this is how it went down. His first Pokemon is a Tyranitar who goes down with one single Leaf Blade of my Venusaur. Next up was Executor, so I had to switch in Sandra and hit it with a Flamethrower to take it out in one hit. Gengar is up next, so I decide to stay in and hit it with a Flamethrower and take it out in one hit too. Entei comes out and I know that I have to go into Pinko here. I do go for Flamethrower because the sun is up and it would do way more than Double Edge. So I managed to hit him with 2 Flamethrowers and a quick attack before he takes us out with Ancient Power. So then I go into Sandra, I manage to outspeed, and one more Flamethrower takes down the Entei. Flygon is up next, so I stay in and get a critical Flamethrower to take it out in one hit as well. Last up is once again his Arcanine, and I know that my Sandra is going to win this matchup, and I kill it with 2 Flamethrowers and a quick attack. I then went straight to the Team Aqua hideout and cleared that rather easily. I got attacked by some boats, so then it was time for yet another amazingly hard gym battle. Yes, you see this right, Tate and Liza have Latios and Latias as their starting Pokemon, which is not great, because those two alone can deal some massive damage to my team. And not to be surprised, they weren't actually their best Pokemon. Starmie gave me a harder time than those two. And after trying another 20 times, I knew that this was not going to be possible. So I fought every single trainer that I could find, and then I trained up a little bit more by fishing, and my entire team was eventually level 80 or higher. I then tried again and started off with Venusaur and Swampert, and I double teamed on their Latios. I used Ice Punch and Sludge Bomb to take it out. Starmie came out next, and I Leaf Bladed it with my Venusaur to take it out in one hit, and then my Swampert also did an Ice Punch on the Latias. The turn after that, my Swampert got taken out, but my Venusaur did manage to land a Sludge Bomb on the Latias. Next turn, I switched in my Feraligatr to hit it with an Ice Punch and take it out, and my Venusaur managed to hit a Sludge Bomb on the Gardevoir. Next out came Medicham, and I tried to one-shot the Gardevoir with another Sludge Bomb, but the Medicham used Fake Out, so my Venusaur flinched, and my Feraligatr did hit a Surf. I then switched in Sandra, took out the Medicham, and Jirachi came out, so they had another legendary. But the turn after that, we finished them all off with a Surf and a Flamethrower. We then acquired our 7th gym badge, and then it was time to take on the Musdeep Space Center together with Steven. I decided to go in with my 3 best Pokemon, which were Swampert, Venusaur, and Charizard. And Steven went in with a Metagross, Aerodactyl, and Starmie. Luckily, this fight wasn't that hard, and my Pokemon made quick work of their Pokemon. Then after the fight, I captured myself a Sharpedo as my new HM slave. I then went down to the Seafloor cavern to yet again solve an ice puzzle. And by solving an ice puzzle, I mean getting stuck there for literally 3 whole hours. And this time it wasn't because I didn't want to look it up, because I looked it up and there are physically no videos on YouTube on how to do this. After searching for about half an hour on the internet, I finally found a guide which listed every single step you had to do to get through this cave. So I used that, and eventually I got out somehow. But then after I got out of the ice part, there was another part, a water part puzzle, and I got stuck there for another hour. Yup, I just wasted 4 hours of my life on useless puzzles. Thanks, creator of Pokemon Kaizo. Eventually I got to Archie himself and I confronted him. And I'm not kidding you, this is my first attempt, and I actually won on my first attempt, which is great. His first Pokemon, Raikou, started off with a super effective hidden power, but my Earthquake managed to finish him off in one hit. Next was a Metagross who took down my Swampert with another hidden power. So I switched in Charizard, hit him with a Flamethrower, but it didn't do enough damage because of the rain, and a Rock Slide took me out in one hit. Pinko then came out and finished the job with another flamethrower. Next up was Snorlax, so I switched in Toad and put it to sleep with Sleep Powder and finished it off with a lot of Leaf Blades. Next up was another legendary dog, Suicune, so I put it to sleep with Sleep Powder and finished it off with 2 Leaf Blades. Wailord went down the same way as Suicune. Last up was Dragonite, and I stayed in and hit it with a Sleep Powder, but he had a Lumberry, so he healed up. I then missed my Sleep Powder. He managed to hit me with 2 Draco Meteors. I put it back to sleep, healed myself up with Synthesis, and 2 Sludge Bombs won me the battle. We then wake up Rayquaza and do all of that shenanigans, yada yada yada, you know how that goes. Now it's time for our final gym battle against Wallace and Juan. First you have to beat Wallace, and after that you actually have to beat Juan as well. And these fights were honestly not that hard. I actually got both of them first try. Wallace starts off with his Kingdra and I start off with my Charizard, and I managed to hit him with a Fly and a Quick Attack before we get taken out by a Draco Meteor. I then switched into Thick Cheek to take it out with one last superpower. Castform came out and I decided to stay in with my Feraligatr, but that was not a good option because Thunder took me out in one hit. So I switched in Toad and took it out with a Leaf Blade. Next up was Ludicolo, who went down to one single Sludge Bomb. Next up was Swampert, so I stayed in and hit it with a Sleep Powder, but he had a Lumberry, so he woke up. He hit me with an Earthquake. I then put him to sleep once again, healed myself up with Synthesis twice, and then one Leaf Blade took down the Swampert, which also got my Toad up to level 100, which was my very first level 100 Pokemon in this run. Next up was Lapras, but I killed it with one single Leaf Blade, and last up was Milotic, who put me to sleep with Hypnosis and managed to hit me with 3 Ice Beams. I was left with 8 health, but I woke up and one Leaf Blade finished the Milotic in one turn. Then I had to fight Juan, but I had to time the heal up between battles, so I did that, and then I lead off with my Venusaur and Swampert as he leads off with his Kingdra and Lapras. I decided to use Sleep Powder on the Kingdra, but he had a Lumberry, so he woke up straight away. Swampert's Rock Slide didn't do enough damage, so next turn I opted to kill the Lapras with Leaf Blade. Castform came out, and then I killed it with another Leaf Blade, and Swampert barely did any damage once again with Rock Slide. Next turn Lantern came out, but Kingdra took out my Swampert with another Octazooka, and Leaf Blade did take out the Lantern, and I switched in my Charizard. Ludicolo then came out, so I used Sludge Bomb on it, but Sandra got taken out by a single Octazooka. So I switched in my Feraligatr, and Sludge Bomb took out the Ludicolo. Last up was Vaporeon, so I double teamed on it with Leaf Blade and Superpower, because I didn't know that Leaf Blade was going to take it out, but it did. So then Draco Meteor hit my Feraligatr, and I hit Superpower on the Kingdra to leave it with a slither of health, and next turn my Feraligatr got taken out, but Venusaur finished off the Kingdra with a Leaf Blade. Now that we have our final gym badge, you might think that we can go to the Pokemon League, but no, we have to do a few more things before we do that. In front of Victory Road, there is a patch of grass where you can catch the final few team members that I need, namely Combuskin and Grovyle. Since throughout this run, I really wasn't that satisfied with Feraligatr, and then I also had one last empty team slot that I needed to fill up, so I chose Blaziken and Sceptile to fill those 2 boots. Blaziken gets the name KFC, and Sceptile gets the name Genk. I don't know why. I then cleared through Victory Road rather easily. We didn't have that many problems, and I went into the Pokemon League, but all of their Pokemon were level 100, so I knew that I had to grind up to max level, and that is exactly what I did. I went into Victory Road, and since the Pokemon there are around level 75, it wasn't that hard, and it only took me a couple of hours to train them up to level 100. And then before we enter the league, here is one last look at the team. Oh yeah, and my Blaziken has Modest Nature, which is very good because that means that my Flamethrower will be hitting way harder. Honestly, the stats on these Pokemon aren't that amazing. They are just their base stats, so that's why they're kinda lowish. And then I went into the first Elite Four fight with Sidney, but as you might think, I forgot to buy potions, so I lost a few times without realizing that I bought potions. And then I went into the shop and I saw that you could buy rare candies, so I grinded up my Pokemon for nothing. Great, thanks. I then proceeded to bump my head 2 hours into the wall because I felt so stupid that I didn't check the Pokemon art, and then I finally got the courage to pick the game back up and decide to take on the Elite Four. His first Pokemon was a Sableye, and I had to use Sleep Powder twice because he had a Lumberry. I then healed myself up with Synthesis and Leaf Bladed him twice because one of my Leaf Blades was a critical hit to take him out. Next up was Alakazam, and I knew that I needed 2 Pokemon to take this thing down because he took down my Pinko with just 2 hidden powers. So then I switched in Genk and hit it with a Leaf Blade to take out the Alakazam. Next up was Jolteon, so I switched in my Toad and took it out with 2 Sludge Bombs. Next up was a Houndoom and I knew that this thing had hidden power, so I couldn't switch into Swampert, so I went to the Blaze again and hit it with a Sky Uppercut and a Quick Attack to take it out. Next up was Toro, so I went into Genk, Leaf Bladed it, we got hit with a very hard hitting Double Edge, and I think that I would take it out next turn, but he had Quick Attack, so Genk went down. So then I switched into KFC and hit it with my own Quick Attack to take down the Toros. Last up was Machamp, so I switched into Charizard and proceeded to set it on fire with my Flamethrower, but Rock Slide got the better of me. Beeb then finally gets in action, hits him with an Earthquake, it doesn't take him out, but Superpower's recoil damage takes down the Machamp. Next up was Phoebe, and her team was even harder to beat. Still not the hardest fight that I've ever had in this game. So after trying about 20 to 30 times, I finally figured out a strategy to beat her. Her first Pokemon, Gengar, goes down to my Genko's Crunch, and then next up is Ludicolo, so I switch in my Venusaur to take it out with 2 Sludge Bombs. Next up is Gardevoir, so I switch into Genk and hit it with a Leaf Blade, but it doesn't do enough damage, so we get 1 shot, and then I switch in Charizard to take it down with 1 final Flamethrower. Crobat then comes out, so I decide to stay in. I hit it with a Flamethrower and it actually burns him. He then puts me to sleep with Hypnosis and hits me with a lot of Air Slashes, and eventually we do go down because we can't hit him anymore. I switch in KFC to finish off the Crobat with a Quick Attack. Next up was Dusclops, and this thing was a very hard Pokemon to beat because he would just use Rest and Double Team to make my moves miss and waste my PP. So after about trying 10 or 12 moves with my Venusaur, I decided to switch in KFC. I managed to hit 2 Flamethrowers, but I got taken out with a Brick Break, and then I switched in Swampert and took down the Dusclops with an Earthquake. Next up was Sableye, and this thing was as annoying as Dusclops. He would also heal up with Recover and set up a lot of double teams to waste my PP, but eventually after Swampert took him down with a critical Earthquake, we win ourselves the second Elite Four member fight. So the next Elite Four member fight was with Glacia, and this woman was so hard to beat, and no, it was not because of her Regis or because of her Lapras or because of her Glalie. No, it was of her freaking Dewgong. Dewgong outspeeded my entire team and one-shotted all of my Pokemon if I wasn't careful. So there really wasn't that much of a strategy behind this fight, I just needed a lot of RNG luck. Eventually, after resetting about 200 times, I'm not kidding you, 200 might even be taken lightly, it might have been 300 or even more. This fight was so hard, we did do it. She starts off with her Glalie and I start off with my Charizard, and I have to take down this Glalie without fainting. And there is about a 95% chance that my Charizard faints, but this time he didn't, and we took down a Glalie with 2 Flamethrowers. Next out was Regis, so I hit it with a Flamethrower, but we get taken out by a Thunder. I then switched in Pinko, hit it with a Flamethrower and a Double Edge before we get taken out by a Hidden Power. KFC then comes out and finishes the job with his Sky Uppercut. Next up was Dewgong, so I switched in my Venusaur and hit it with a Leaf Blade, and it took it out in 1 hit, which is very rare to happen. Next up was Wailord, so I decided to stay in, hit it with a Leaf Blade, but it did in 1 shot, and Water Spout took out my Venusaur. Genk then took out the Wailord, and next up was Swampert, who is faster than my Sceptile. How is Swampert faster than Sceptile? I don't know, but he hit us with an Ice Beam, and 1 Leaf Blade takes out the Swampert. Her last Pokemon was Lapras, and I hit it with a Leaf Blade. It doesn't one-shot. She hits us with a very big Hydro Pump, and then hits us with an Ice Shard. I then switch in Swampert and finish it off with a Rock Slide to win ourselves the 3rd Elite Four member battle. And now it's time for our final Elite Four member battle with Drake. Flippin' Drake. This guy is on my most hated list from now on, just because of this battle. I used to think that this guy was the coolest Elite Four member, but because of this game, I hate him now, because I was stuck here for literally 4 hours. 4 hours. I'm not even exaggerating that. I could show you all of the footage and it would be 4 hours of just this fight, me resetting, and I honestly wanted to give up because I didn't know that it was going to be possible. But there was this one time that I got to his final Pokemon Dragonite, and he literally had a sliver of health left, like 2 or 3 health left, and then he took out my final Pokemon, so I knew that it had to be possible, so I had to keep trying and trying and trying. But I really pushed my limits with this fight. The amount of RNG needed was almost almost impossible, almost, but I did beat it. So let's see how I did it. His first Pokemon Latios has about a 90% chance to take down my Charizard with a single Draco Meteor, but that can't happen because one of my flies has to be a crit and the second one has to take him out, which eventually happened. But even if that happened, it wasn't a guaranteed win, by far actually. He then switched in his Dragonite and I switched in my Swampert and hit him with 3 Ice Punches. I have no idea how that second Ice Punch didn't take him out, but we took out the Dragonite. Next up is Tyranitar, who doesn't give me that much of a problem because 2 Leaf Blades take it out as he just sets up a Dragon Dance. Next up is Kingdra, and this thing had also about a 90% chance to take down my Venusaur with 2 Ice Beams, and I had to hit it with 2 Sleep Powders because we always had a Lumberry on him. In this one I managed to hang on, hit him with 2 Sleep Powders and then heal myself up with Synthesis. The Kingdra then woke up too early, almost took me down once again, but I managed to get it back to sleep, heal myself up and then take it down with another Sludge Bomb and a Leaf Blade. Next up was Latias, so I stayed in and hit it with 2 Sludge Bombs before my Venusaur went down to a Dragon Claw. I then switched in Pinko and went for a quick attack to take down the Latias. Next up was Salamence, and I really didn't know how to take him down easily, so I just stayed in and hit him with a Double Edge and a quick attack before we get taken out. I then went into Gank to hit him with a Dragon Claw, but Air Slash one-shotted me. I then thought that I had lost because I knew that quick attack wasn't going to one-shot it, and it didn't, but then I realized that my Charizard also had quick attack, so I used quick attack with my Charizard and won the battle. I was honestly speechless. I was just sitting there in happiness, so happy that I finally beat this guy, and then I still had to face the champion. So after healing up my Pokemon with my last few full restores and elixirs, I tried to take on Steven. And I'm not kidding you, this is my first attempt. His first Pokemon was Metagross, who I took down with a Flamethrower and a quick attack. Then next up was Jirachi, so I stayed in and hit it with 2 Flamethrowers and that thing was down too. Next up was Starmie, so I switched in Gank and I hit it with a Leaf Blade, but it had 1 HP left, so it hit me with a super effective Ice Beam, which almost took me out, but 1 more Leaf Blade and Starmie was down. Next up was Mewtwo, so I didn't know what to do and I stayed in and I hit it with a Leaf Blade and it was a critical hit and it took down the Mewtwo in 1 hit. If it wasn't a crit, I would not have won this fight. Next was Aerodactyl, so I switched in Swampert to take it down with 2 Muddy Waters. And I still had my full team remaining for his last Pokemon, which was Deoxys. I stayed in and let Beep go down to a Psycho Boost. I then switched in Gank to try and outspeed it, but Deoxys was still faster and killed me with a Psycho Boost. And Hero was kind of panicking because I thought that Deoxys was going to sweep my entire team because I couldn't outspeed him. Switched in Pinko, he hit me with a Psycho Boost, I was left with 10 HP and 1 Flamethrower finishes off the Deoxys, and I am the champion of Pokemon Emerald Kaizo with starters only. This is my life accomplishment, achievement. I don't care. This was an amazing run and I kinda loved doing it, but it kinda drove me crazy as well. As you can see, this took me about 96 in-game hours, and normally a game like Pokemon Emerald takes me about 20 hours to finish, which means that it took me 5 times longer than a normal playthrough, which is crazy. Normally I spend around 5 to 6 hours on each Pokemon challenge, so that means that this took me about 25 to 30 hours to finish. So if you guys could leave a like, that would be really appreciated. Now, would I recommend playing Pokemon Emerald Kaizo to you guys? Well, if you really want to push your limits and you really want to torture yourself and you don't want to have any fun in Pokemon, I would definitely try this. If you want to try and keep your sanity, I would leave this game alone. Oh, and definitely do not try and Nuzlocke it because it's kind of almost impossible. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always people, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'm Zwigo, and I'll see you guys next time.